What's exciting for me is that we've been on this journey for a long time, you know, essentially market mix modeling back in the 50s, then now looking at TV attribution and MTA, and looking at evolving that further and getting it to a true answer. I think that we are still solving problems that we probably should have already cracked. But as an industry, there are challenges with getting all of that data to live in the same space, with walled gardens over here and set-top box data being over there. And so how do we bring it all over in together? A lot of the partners we talked about today are super exciting and super forward-thinking. But at the same time, we need to think about how we can build that scale and build that reach across all of those spaces, because there's still, to a certain extent, panel or database from a point of view of what's on the set-top box or within OTT. So we're getting some of the data signals, but it would be so much more powerful when we bring all of those together.
And what about attribution? Where does that stand across screen? Same problem, or? So
we were talking specifically about TV attribution today. I think that where we're at in terms of TV attribution, we've made a lot of progress, but as you heard us talk about just now, we're not completely along that journey yet. So we have some of those spaces where we've reached the point of being able to attribute some of the credit to what's happening. I think there's no doubt that TV drives other media as well. Certainly in the models that we do at Foundry, we do a model called POEM, which stands for Paid, Owned and Earned Media Mixed Models. And what that does, it looks at not only the TV attribution and the direct plays, but also the indirect plays that it has on other media. So we'll look at when something's happened in TV, what was the impact on paid social, what was the impact on search, what was the impact in store or on website, etc. And then looking at how that all interplays together so that we don't make dud decisions on what to reinvest in or take out of the mix. The other piece that we do with that particular type of modeling is we also bring in brand equity data to ensure that we're understanding where's our baseline, not just from point of view of baseline sales, but also understanding our baseline in equity as well, and how we can get to be more fast moving in terms of how we look at brand equity as well.
Do you think brand equity is considered as much as it should be in terms of the current automated world we're living in?
Honestly, I think it depends on the category. I'm very fearful oftentimes that people follow ROI off of a cliff. You heard me say it before, that ROI is super important. There is no doubt about that. That gives us a precise indicator in terms of what did we do and what had an impact. But oftentimes when we talk about ROI, we talk about short-term ROI. So a lot of the models are telling us what happened in a moment of time. What I think we need to do from a point of view of brand equity is also think about content and those longer term brand building investments that we make, to then look at the long-term return on ROI as well, by building that hybrid of a model that looks at the ROI plus a brand equity, and then the other thing is the deduplicated reach and frequency that we talked about earlier, right?
What does the term identity graph mean to you? How do you define that, and where does that stand?
Look, I think identity graph, I would move more towards metagraph, because I think that the reality is GDPR has hit pretty hard, obviously, in Europe, but we're already starting to see in Vermont, in LA, and other places within the United States, we're starting to see that they're following that path too. The reality is I believe we will have something GDPR-esque within the United States fairly soon. For me, the metagraph is where I start to think about all of the work that the Publicis Spine team is doing in terms of building out what that looks like by using bespoke partners like Experian, like LiveRamp, mapping that to data that's actually tied to true sales, and mapping that to individuals and getting to a people a metagraph versus it being a device graph per se. Because devices is great, but if we can get to people within the parameters of GDPR, then we can get to a much better understanding of behavior and therefore being more relevant to consumers.